Found out my wife chose my stepdaughter's lie over me. So I filed for divorce, saved her screenshots, proved my share with receipts and contracts, won half the assets, funded scholarships, and walked away free after the divorce was finalized. Welcome back to AF Tales. Today's story is about a husband who loses his marriage the night his wife believes her adult daughter's lie without even asking for the truth. As you listen, think about the moment you would have stopped trying to prove yourself. I remember that evening in pieces. The light in the living room felt too bright. The air felt too still. And my stepdaughter stood there with that careful look she used when she wanted to seem hurt and harmless at the same time. "He's lying, Mom. He's always hated me." She said it softly, but there was a smirk tucked inside the words. Her eyes were wide, almost shining, like she already knew how this would end. She was 20 years old, more than old enough to understand what false accusations can do, and she still delivered it like a performance. I looked at my wife, Elena. I expected confusion. I expected questions. At the very least, I expected a pause. Instead, I saw something much worse. I saw a decision already made. "Max," she said, her voice flat, "pack your things. I can't do this anymore." For a second, I thought I had heard her wrong. We had built years together. We had a home, a routine, a business we helped grow. We had plans, obligations, memories in every room of that house. And now she was ending all of it in one sentence because her daughter pointed at me and said the right words in the right tone. "Are you serious?" I asked. "You're throwing me out because she said something." Elena did not answer the question. She did not ask what happened. She did not ask her daughter for details. She just stood there looking tired and cold, like I was already a problem she wanted removed. That was the part that stayed with me, not the accusation itself, not even the insult. It was the fact that my wife never once turned toward me and said, "Tell me your side." That is usually the moment people miss. The lie hurts, but the real damage comes from the person who wants the lie to be true, because it makes their choice easier. I packed in silence. I folded shirts with hands that did not feel like my own. I placed shoes in a suitcase as carefully as if noise itself might humiliate me further. Behind me, I could feel my stepdaughter's satisfaction like heat on the back of my neck. I did not give her the scene she wanted. I did not beg. I did not raise my voice. When I reached the front door, I looked back once. Elena still had not moved. Her daughter stood slightly behind her with her arms folded, wearing the calm look of someone who believed she had won. Then I stepped outside with one suitcase and nowhere I wanted to go. That first night, I slept in a friend's spare room. The ceiling above me had a crack running from one corner to the light fixture, and I stared at it until morning. Every few minutes I replayed the scene in my head, trying to find the missing piece, the sentence that would make it all make sense. There wasn't one. My phone lit up a few times over the next days, but it was never what I hoped for. No message from Elena saying she had made a mistake. No apology. No panic. No "come home and let's talk." Instead, I saw social media posts from her daughter, indirect jabs, little lines about men who needed to learn their place, smug captions meant to bait me into reacting. For a day or two, it worked. I was furious. I wanted to defend myself. I wanted to tell everyone what kind of game she was playing. But then something in me started shifting. Pain has a way of stripping things down to the truth, and the truth was simple. Her daughter may have lit the match, but Elena chose to burn the house. Once I accepted that, the grief changed shape. It became colder, cleaner, less desperate. By the end of the first week, I stopped waiting for an apology. By the second week, I stopped wanting one. I got up early. I made my own coffee. I borrowed my friend's small kitchen and cooked simple meals. I wrote lists. I opened folders I had not touched in years. Financial records, business transfers, mortgage documents, partnership emails, contracts, receipts. Every quiet contribution I had made to the life Elena now acted like she had built alone. She thought I would leave empty-handed because she had decided I was disposable. That was her first real mistake. People often confuse quiet with weak. They mistake patience for helplessness. They think the person who keeps things running is the person easiest to erase. I met with a lawyer in the second week, an old friend who had known me long before I met Elena. I put the documents in front of him and let him read. When he looked up, his expression had changed. "Well," he said, "you're not walking away with nothing." That was the first sentence in days that gave me any peace. We went through everything line by line. The house, the joint accounts, the investment account we had both contributed to, the early transfers I made when Elena's business was only an idea and a stack of hopeful notes, the contracts that named me in ways she had stopped acknowledging once things became stable. I had never needed credit while we were happy. I had no interest in counting who did more. But once someone rewrites history to remove you, paperwork becomes a very honest witness. By the third week, my life had a strange kind of order again. I ran in the mornings. I worked through documents in the afternoons. I slept better. Not well, but better. Something inside me had settled into a hard calm. Then one evening, there was a knock at my friend's door. I opened it and found Elena standing there. She looked softer than I expected, like she had practiced appearing wounded on the drive over. Her voice was gentle, careful. "Max," she said, "we both need to reflect. Maybe it's time you apologize and come home." For a moment I just looked at her, not because I was shocked, but because the audacity was almost impressive. She had thrown me out without a conversation, left me to sleep in someone else's house, let her daughter mock me in public, and after all that she had arrived expecting me to say sorry. That kind of thinking does not happen overnight. It comes from a long habit of believing your feelings matter more than another person's reality. I smiled, went back inside for a second, and returned with an envelope. "I did reflect," I said, handing it to her. She opened it right there on the porch. Her face changed the moment she saw the first page, divorce papers. She gave a small laugh, but it was not real laughter. It was the sound people make when they can feel control slipping out of their hands. "Max, this is ridiculous," she said. "You're upset. We don't need to go this far." I leaned against the doorframe. "You believed an accusation without asking me one question. You told me to pack my things. Now you want me to apologize and come home." "She's my daughter," Elena said, and her voice sharpened with frustration as if that explained everything. What was I supposed to do, ignore her? "You were supposed to be my wife," I said. "You were supposed to know me." That landed. I could see it in her face, not because she suddenly understood my pain, but because she was beginning to understand consequences. Then another voice cut in. "Good," her daughter said as she came up behind her. "He's finally leaving for good. Mom, let him go. He was always jealous of me anyway." 3 weeks earlier, those words would have gotten under my skin. Now they just clarified the room. There she was, no trembling innocence this time, no careful performance, just open contempt. And for the first time I saw Elena notice it too, only for a second, just a flicker. But it was there. I looked at both of them and said, "You'll regret this." Then I closed the door. Their voices carried down the hall after that, sharp, frustrated, no longer perfectly in step. That was the moment I knew the story had changed. I was not the one outside begging to be let back in. I was the one walking forward. Over the next few days, the legal process moved fast. My lawyer filed for divorce, formal division of assets, and recognition of my financial stake in the business. Accounts were reviewed. Ownership was documented. Property contributions were laid out in black and white. When Elena realized what was happening, she started calling. The calls came in bursts, then texts, then longer texts, then messages that tried on different masks. Anger, reason, nostalgia, guilt. One even said, "After everything we shared, is this really who you are?" I never answered. Silence is not always avoidance. Sometimes it is the first healthy boundary a person has ever set. Her daughter kept posting online, and this time the posts were more direct, bitter, mocking. I saved screenshots and moved on. She thought public cruelty made her look strong. In reality, it made her look exactly what she was, immature and threatened. The official court summons hit their house 2 weeks later. I was not there to see it, but I could imagine it well enough. Alina opening the documents with that same certainty she had worn the night she threw me out, then seeing the property claims, the business evidence, the records of transfers, the contracts with my name attached, the legal language that did not care about her feelings or her daughter's version of events. For the first time, she was dealing with something that would not bend just because she wanted it to. We saw each other again outside the courthouse before the first hearing. Alina looked tired. Not heartbroken, tired. Her daughter stood beside her with her arms crossed, glaring at me like hatred alone could reverse paperwork. "Max, please," Alina said quietly. "You don't have to do this. Think about everything we built." I looked at her and said, "Exactly, we built it." Her daughter stepped forward. "You're just greedy. You never loved her. You only care about the money." It almost would have been funny if the situation were not so ugly. "I'm not the one who lied to ruin a marriage," I said. She started toward me, anger bright in her face, but Alina grabbed her arm and hissed, "Stop. You're making it worse." That word hung between them. Worse. The truth was, worse had already arrived. They were just now noticing. The first hearing was procedural, but even then I could feel the balance shifting. My lawyer was calm, organized, exact. He presented records, timelines, my documented role in the business, the mortgage payments I made, the early funding that kept her company alive when it was nothing but a risky idea. Alina's lawyer tried to minimize my part. My lawyer answered with receipts. It is hard to keep pretending someone contributed nothing when your own signature says otherwise. Court hearings are not dramatic the way people imagine. They are slower, colder, more exhausting, but that almost made it more powerful. No grand speeches, just facts, just dates, just evidence walking steadily across the room while the story someone told about you falls apart. At the second hearing, her daughter sat in the back row again, staring at me the entire time. She wanted me to feel small. Instead, every time she appeared, she reminded everyone that this entire collapse began with a daughter who could not stand sharing her mother's loyalty. There was one moment I will never forget. During cross-examination, my lawyer asked Alina, "Did you remove your husband from the marital home without discussion or proof of wrongdoing?" She hesitated. It was not a long pause, but it was long enough. Her eyes moved, almost by instinct, toward her daughter in the gallery. It was such a revealing little motion. Even then, under oath, she was still looking to the same person who helped destroy her marriage. "Yes," she said finally, and her voice came out smaller than before. That was all. One word. But it changed the room. I did not smile, I did not gloat. I just sat there and let the truth stand on its own. After that hearing, her daughter followed me into the parking lot. "You think you've won," she said. "You're pathetic. My mom will never forgive you." I turned and looked at her. "She doesn't have to forgive me, but one day she'll understand who destroyed her marriage." For the first time, I saw something break through her anger. Not remorse. Not exactly. More like uncertainty, the brief look of someone realizing the person they used to control is no longer playing the same game. Then I got into my car and drove away. A few mutual friends kept me updated even when I did not ask. Alina and her daughter were fighting now. Loudly, often, publicly. The blind trust that once felt automatic had turned into suspicion. Alina started questioning things, stories, timelines, excuses. Her daughter responded the only way she seemed to know how, by lashing out harder. That is another pattern people ignore until it is too late. Control works well right up until consequences arrive. Then the alliance built on manipulation starts eating itself. The second major ruling went in my favor. The judge recognized my financial contributions to the business and upheld my claim to half the marital assets that could be traced and documented. It was not revenge in the dramatic sense. It was simply the law catching up with reality. Still, I would be lying if I said I felt nothing when I saw Alina's face as the decision came down. Shock, anger, fear. Not fear of losing me, I think. Fear of losing the version of life she assumed would always be there no matter how carelessly she treated me. That night she sent me a message. "Max, please, we can fix this. Let's talk without the lawyers." I read it once and set the phone down. There was a time when those words would have pulled me straight back into the cycle. Talk, explain, compromise. Absorb the blame, work harder. Be more patient. Earn basic fairness one more time. But once trust is broken at the foundation, conversation alone does not rebuild it. Sometimes "let's talk" really means "please make this easier for me." I never replied. Instead, I made the one decision in this whole process that felt less like defense and more like meaning. My lawyer and I arranged to place the proceeds from my share of the business into a trust that funded scholarships for women who had been abandoned, financially trapped, or silenced. If that chapter of my life had to end in pain, I wanted at least part of what came from it to become something useful. When Elena learned what I had done, the reaction from what I heard was explosive. She accused her daughter of pushing me too far. Her daughter blamed her for marrying me in the first place. The two of them, once so united against me, were now throwing every shard at each other. And I was standing in a new apartment with the windows open, breathing like a free man. The final hearing felt quiet. Not easy, but settled. By then, the structure of the case was clear. The assets were divided. The business share was recognized. The marriage, in any real sense, had already been over for months. Elena sat with her shoulders slumped. Her daughter whispered angrily beside her, but even she looked rattled now. The certainty was gone. The smirk was gone. There was only panic and blame left. When it was over, I gathered my documents and walked past them. Elena looked up at me with red eyes, searching for something. Pity, maybe, regret. A sign that there was still a bridge left somewhere. I gave her nothing cruel, nothing kind either, just the truth of my absence. Outside, her daughter was waiting. "You destroyed her," she said. I stopped and answered, "No, she destroyed herself. You just helped." She had no response to that. Only anger, and anger is not much use when the truth has already arrived. In the weeks that followed, I heard the house was sold to cover legal fees and losses. The business started slipping without the support I had quietly provided for years. Her daughter moved out. Elena ended up alone in a smaller apartment with the life she had protected reduced to pieces. I did not celebrate that. This is important. Real healing does not need an audience, and it does not need dancing on wreckage. I took no pleasure in seeing someone broken. What I felt was something steadier than that. Relief, freedom, space. I signed the final papers at a clerk's desk one gray afternoon. The clerk slid the folder toward me and said, "It's finalized." I rested my hand on the page for a second and let the sentence settle. Then I walked out of the courthouse, down the steps, and into a city that felt strangely open. After that, I built a life out of small things. Morning runs by the river. Coffee that tasted the way I liked it because nobody else was in the kitchen rearranging me. Furniture placed where I wanted it. Music played low in the evenings. Quiet that felt like peace instead of punishment. One morning, months later, I received an email from the first scholarship recipient. I did not know her. She did not know the full story behind the money. She simply wrote, "This changed my life, thank you." I sat with that message for a long time. Somewhere along the way, what began as survival had turned into something better. The ending they wrote for me was exile, shame, and silence. But that was not where I landed. I landed in a life that belonged to me again. Later, a mutual friend told me Elena still asked why I never answered her messages. I only smiled. Some questions lose their right to an answer when they arrive too late. The final box from that old life sat in my apartment for weeks before I dealt with it. Inside was the ring, a set of old keys, a few printed photos from trips we took when things still felt honest. One evening I carried the box to the river. I did not throw anything in. I am not dramatic by nature. I just stood there, looked at what remained, and understood that none of it had power over me anymore. I thanked the past for the lesson, turned around, and walked home. Because in the end, the deepest kind of revenge was never making them suffer. It was refusing to let their betrayal define the rest of my life. It was learning that being chosen once means very little if the same person can discard you without truth, without thought, and without remorse. It was discovering that freedom can arrive in the exact shape of the loss you never asked for. A few lessons stay with me from all of this. If someone believes the worst about you without even asking for your side, the relationship is already more fragile than it looks. If a parent keeps using love as an excuse for unfairness, that is not loyalty. It is imbalance. If you quietly help build a life, protect your records, your rights, and your dignity, because respect is not always returned just because you gave it. When someone tells you to come back, pay attention to whether they miss you or just miss what you provided. And if a painful ending gives you the chance to build a more honest life, take it. Some doors close because they should. What would you have done the night Alina told Max to pack his things? And do you think he was right to stay silent and let the court do the talking? If this story made you think, let me know in the comments and subscribe to AF Tales for more stories like this.